Hello viewers, so had the bike out, I washed it and packed it up, but before I got it away I thought I would, I've had it a while, so I've pretty well had everything go wrong with it that can, and I've fixed it and modified it, and it's now turned into a very reliable bike. Not much goes wrong with it, and I know the thing pretty well inside and out these days, so if anything does I can usually fix it. So I thought I'd go through the list of things that I've done for others that might have bought this bike new and are looking to strengthen it up and make it a little more robust. Off the factory floor they're okay for commuting around a city, but for going out in the bush and doing anything more than a gravel road, they've got some pretty obvious weak points. So I created a list of all the stuff that I've done and got and added, and I'll go through that. So I'll go grab my list and we'll start. So at the start we'll go through stuff that you sort of need to go bush. So this is just a Kawasaki tank bag that I've been using. It's okay. I wouldn't call it good. It's only okay. It does hold things, but it's a bit too wide here when you're trying to stand up your leg. That gets in the way of your legs, so I'm actually thinking of getting replacing that. I made up some panniers for the side. These are using SW Motec frames, and they just clip on. They're actually made out of Pelican cases, or they're actually not Pelican brand, they're a cheaper brand, but they're bolted on there. They've got a plate inside that holds them on there, and they've been extremely good. I've done some day trips and some multi-week long trips, and they've been very good, and there's one for each side. So there's some things that I've added on. I also added on the Pelican case on the back, and that's where it started to get interesting. So the rack on these is very weak. From the factory, I wouldn't even call it a rack, it's just a fender. It is that weak that if you go on a normal ride on bitumen, you're liable to start snapping bolts just from vibration. Extremely weak. I guess their 10 kilo limit in the manual sort of says it all. So what I did is, if you have a look in there, I've got a 3/8 aircraft grade aluminium plate, and I've also drilled through the rack, if you have a look there, drilled through and put bolts and nuts right the way through. High tensile grade 10 bolts and nuts, and here as well, and that bolts that down extremely tight and rigid, and nothing moves, nothing vibrates, so nothing will break. So this here that holds a W Motec, that used to basically just come loose because this here would move all the time because of the flex in it, so now that stays rock solid. The other thing too is they had 6mm bolts in here with the rack that was on there. I've replaced those with 8mm bolts and bolted through straight into the subframe, and changed the bolts in the subframe, which is up under there, and this is done. I've come off this, I've crashed it, it's done some pretty extreme stuff, and they have never broken since. Definitely a modification if you're going to go off-road that you have to do. The rack on them is, from the factory, is absolutely hopeless, and you have to do something about it, and that's definitely worked. So moving on from there, I actually had the fender that used to come down from here. It used to grab the number plate, so I moved the number plate up onto the fender there. If you're going to have knobbly tyres, the Dunlop 606s, you have to move that. There's nothing else you can do, it's got to be moved, so that's another mod that's definitely worth doing. But that case system and rack system has worked really well. There's always a debate against solid racks, solid cases versus soft cases. There's to's and fro's for each. Solid ones haven't been too bad. I haven't got any soft luggage at the moment, but I'll probably get some, because there is times when that could be better. So, but there's to's and fro's for each of it. So that's the rack system and bags. Oh, I forgot the front bags. So another thing I've got is bags that go on the SW Motec engine guards. So these SW Motec bags just go on the engine and radiator guards and sit there. They're excellent bags, definitely worth it. just for that little bit extra weight, and it's good to move that weight forward. Another thing I've done is added, at this end of the bike, is added a tool tube. Another thing, couldn't do without it these days. All my tyre changing gears in there. It's perfect for holding tubes. Easy to fit, easy to make, and worth only a couple of dollars. I mentioned already I've got engine guards both sides, and I've got tape on there because the bags rub on the, it's just to save the rubbing. That's really all that does. And also a SW Motec centre stand. Another thing definitely worth having, couldn't do without it. You need to change tyres on the run, which you will do at some point if you go off-road. Definitely worth having. As well as that, one thing with the SW Motec stand, the spring that holds it up isn't strong enough. So when it's up, I just use this rubber strap, and it just straps up onto here just to hold it up. Another thing I've done is shorten the side stand by, I've taken about half an inch off the bottom, because the bike stands too upright, and when you've got it loaded up it'll fall over in the wind. Definitely worth having, definitely worth doing, is shortening that. Most of the bolts in the frame, that's been changed both sides to high tensile grade 8 or grade 10 bolts, and I've also done the drill through on the top frame after the Kawasaki dealer, local dealer, ruined it. So I've changed that out, I drilled that through, and I'll put some pictures and different things there to show you what I've done. Got an SW Motec bash plate, because the plastic one started to fall to bits. Just before a trip I was taking, I'll put that on there. That's definitely worth doing if you're going to go off-road in any rough sort of terrain. Rocks, I've hit that a couple of times on rocks, definitely worth having. Move around to the front, I'll put spotlights on. Again, I ride sometimes early in the morning, and there can be kangaroos in Australia, kangaroos around. So these spotlights, they're only 10 watts each, but they definitely help. They're about double what the headlights are. And then that's coupled to a switch up here that I got off eBay that works really well. Okay, so I'll go back and have a look at my list and see what's next on the list. Okay, next we'll go to the handlebars. I've got bark busters, these EGO bark busters. Also bought the weights for the ends. I didn't have them on to start with, but I thought I'd try them. I don't know if there's any difference, but they're on there, and it's a nice smooth transition if you come off, so nothing's going to grab. I've actually put some cricket bat material, that's just cricket bat handle, just to make those a bit thicker and take out some vibration. That's the GoPro remote for turning that on and off. I've got mirrors on here off my old Z800 Kawasaki. I've got a few outlets. I've got 2 cigarette lighter outlets just for charging and different things like that. I've got 2 USBs here and 2 USBs here. That's just for the phone, but my main electronics that I run all the time, I tend to use these SAE sort of simple connectors because they don't rattle apart. Everything rattles out of these cigarette lighters, so things like the GPS that are plugged in all the time, I use those connectors. They're cheap, they're easy to get, easy to fix, easy to do everything with. Homemade GPS, and I've got a video that I've done of this. That's a 7-inch screen on a tablet using HEMA maps. That works really well. Spot tracker sits there, but I sometimes have it on my actual suit as well, but sometimes it's there. I normally have a clock in here, but it's not there. Clip my maps in there. I always have paper maps. Then over that side is the switch, as I said earlier, and one of those gizmos that stops getting cramps. That's just good for long trips. I've also got the taller screen, the taller Kawasaki screen, just a little bit more wind protection. I modified the petcock. This is the original petcock, but it's actually modified to remove the vacuum off functionality. So the vacuum off's been removed and plugged, and if you go around to the other side, you'll be able to see that I've plugged on top of the carby here. There's just a plug on the vacuum nipple that's on there. I took off the heat shield on here and wrapped it. I thought I was having some trouble with the carby heat, so I wrapped that, but made no difference, but I like it, so I left it on there. I've also removed the carby jet heating system in Australia. It's 110 degrees Fahrenheit here in the last few days, so no need having carby warming, so removed that. That normally goes in here and in here. As you can see, it's been plugged. Got an extra clutch cable that's already threaded through, so if this one breaks I just flip over to the new one. I've got a Redback air cleaner in there, and I'm running the side off here as an experiment because on the other side the intake just sucks in so much dust, so I'm just experimenting with leaving that door off to see what happens. I've taken the snorkel out of the airbox on the other side, not that it's used anymore, and I've also put a flap of rubber on the other side to try and stop the dust coming in. I've got a Lex exhaust, which used to be black, but they tend to go silver after a while, as I found out, and that's just a on the standard front pipe into a Lex exhaust, and I've got the baffle in there. So let's go and have another look at the list and see what else I've done. One thing I forgot to show you, I've put a, when I was over here at the Petcock, I put a fuel filter in here too, which is quite a neat little right angle bend jobby. And people say that when the tank gets low they'll start to starve for fuel with a fuel filter in, but I've had no problems with this. Also had the dealer really screwed up the dealer screwed up a lot of things on this bike, so I don't get back there for obvious reasons. Really screwed up the jetting, and I was using up to 7 litres to 100 k's, which I don't know what that is, but 20 miles to the gallon or something like that. Anyway, I got the standard jets put in there and filled around with them, and I'm now getting probably about 4.5, so I went to 390 kilometres and not hit reserve the other day, so quite good range now. Another thing I did is just in here I just made up this plastic. It just guards the bottom of the shocky, so as you can see there, it just blocks off any sand or anything going down and getting caught up in the shocky, just a little guard. I've also got a little cable that comes out of here that just plugs into the C-Tech charger and keeps everything charged. If I'm not using the bike for a while, I'll just plug it in, and that keeps the battery good. I've actually got an AGM battery in there. The original battery died, so I've put a AGM in there, and that's actually been really good. Okay, back to my list. I'll just have to see what the last couple of things are. Oh, one thing that I forgot, I've put rim locks in the rims, and there's the weights for the other side. That allows me to run very low pressures on the front and the rear. I've got rim locks in the rear as well. I've got 4mm tubes in there, so I can run really low pressures in sand and where I need traction, and not spin the tyre and cut the valve off. Still got a couple of things I've got to get. I've got to get a little guard for that master cylinder there, which I haven't got. And I think the last thing that I haven't mentioned is I also put some mesh. You probably won't be able to see it, but in here in the radiator I'll put some just flywire type mesh in there, just to stop things getting like sand and bush seeds and things like that from getting stuck in there. That seems to work pretty well. It doesn't make any difference to the cooling capacity, and just stops that sort of stuff getting lodged in the radiator. So I think that's pretty well it. I can't think of anything else too major. I'm always tinkering with it, so there's probably something I've forgotten, but that's pretty well it in a nutshell. So if you're going to buy one of these bikes, these are probably one of the better 650s off the showroom floor as far as most things are done, fuel tank capacity, etc. But if you're going to take them truly off-road, you do really need to start looking at things like the frame bolts. My frame bolts that I replaced, they started to stretch nearly immediately. I think on the first ride one come loose, so you definitely have to look at those. Mainly bolts and the rack. That'd be the first thing I'd do, is tyres, bolts and rack, and at least then your bike's not going to fall in half when you're out there. Okay, I'll put this together and then put it up on YouTube, and if anyone's got one of these bikes and wants to know any more detail or anything, just put something in the comments and I'll try and get to it. But most things have been covered. Okay, I'll catch you next time. One last thing I did was, this here is the vent for the carby, and it's just open to the carby as far as I'm aware, so I stuck a small scintillated brass fuel filter in there, and that just stops any sand and dust or anything making its way into that tube and downhill into the carby. So I know the DR Suzuki's have filters on theirs, so I thought if it's good enough for the DR, it's good enough for the KLR, so I put one on. Can't be detrimental, can only be good. Flamer's got a flat front. Now we're going to see if we've got all the tools.
That had been done up with something, maybe putting a spanner on this or something.
Go on the Facebook page.
So I would have got that nut